For years, decades, centuries, millennia, this one thing has proven to be the variable that has brought destruction to families and even entire kingdoms of this earth. Lust, the controlling sexual desire, an immense craving. Lust does not discriminate, neither will it mitigate the misery found in our world. In fact, it is the driving cause of lots of the misery. So man is created in the image of God. This would mean that God possesses emotional traits. A sexual desire for someone of the opposite sex is a trait that man was created with. How else could man be fruitful and multiply? The question we're trying to get at is, how could this God-given emotion morph into a perverse passion for sexual gratification paraded among individuals today? Questions need answers, and no better place to find these answers than consulting the Bible for the top 5 verses that give more detail about lust. Number 1, 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11. Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul. There seems to be such an attraction to the ways and customs of the world that appear to have a pull on Christians. What should be noted is that Peter implores the followers of Christ to abstain from these attractions. Why? Because he says they are strangers and pilgrims. Such classifications are reserved for those dwelling temporarily in a land. There is great need in Peter's eyes to reaffirm to his hearers that they are only passing through the land and that they need not be attached to the things the land is providing, whether through convenience, whether through luxury, or whether through sensuality. Migrants need to keep their noses clean in a foreign land to avoid trouble. And this is what Christians need to keep in mind, that they are just passing through this earth and that their aspirations should be spiritually driven, not driven by lust. The desires of the flesh are in a constant battle against the soul, and if left without treatment, lust will destroy a man for eternity. Paul says that those that live in the flesh cannot please God. Would you really concede to the powers of darkness to nurture the flesh that cannot please God? Number 2, 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 14. Having eyes full of adultery, and that cannot cease from sin, beguiling unstable souls, and heart they have exercised with covetous practices, cursed children. Peter is well acquainted with the works of the flesh, and if we are truthful, all of us should be as well. When we succumb to sexual temptations, it begins with a denial of our weakness in the flesh. This is what occurred when Peter denied knowing Jesus Christ. Jesus knows what is in man, but we as humans deny the truth. The eyes full of adultery are exactly what is being portrayed. The constant desire for sexual pleasure is fixated in the minds of many today, resulting in addiction and hearts given to constant covetous practices. Would it be shocking for individuals of this mentality to be unable to control their lustful appetite? Number 3, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 3 to 5. For this is the will of God, even your sanctification, that ye should abstain from fornication, that every one of you should know how to possess his vessel in sanctification and honor, not in the lust of concupiscence, even as the Gentiles which know not God. If it has not yet been clear thus far in the video, sexual lust is sin and will cause your soul to perish if not handled by submitting to God. Kingdoms have suffered as a result of concupiscence. We can point to the incident King David perpetrated when he forced himself on Bathsheba. Rather than staying occupied with kingdom duties, David decided to give into the fleshly lusts and have his men deliver Bathsheba to him so he can have sex with her, and then kill her husband. Such immense shame David brought to the nation, to his family, and through his sin, even the enemies of God have blasphemed the name of the Lord. Is illicit sex worth the destruction of so many lives? The Bible makes it real evident that the main concern of God is the salvation of men. Jesus Christ came into this world to save his people from their sins. The heathen are not his people because they have not professed his name, and therefore they don't have it in their minds to abstain from fleshly lusts. But the Christian that professes their love for God must establish a deep relationship with their Creator that bars them from even thinking about lustful desires. Your holiness is the Lord's motivation for entering the lives of men and women. Holiness of character is entirely possible by the grace of God. Number 4, 1 John chapter 2, verse 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. The world is typically symbolic of those that are opposed to the laws of Jehovah, those that carry their own ideas into daily living, those that have customs and beliefs that do not involve God. The world also offers things that are necessary for a fulfilled life: houses, lands, clothing, cars, relationships, friends, all of which are excellent to have, but none of which should come between you and God. If we think about only gratifying the flesh, we will fall into perdition because our hearts are deceitful and wicked, and we don't even know them. Pride convinces us that worldly goods and pursuits make us better individuals. While these subjects are not inherently sinful, the person not consecrated to the Lord uses these rewards and materialistic goods for pomp and for boasting. The Bible tells us we shouldn't set our eyes on any evil thing. When we are lusting, we are giving way to the sinful image we have conjured up and disregarding the spiritual life in order to feed the desires that separate us from God. Our satisfaction in this life and the life to come cannot come from indulgence to sin. Our physical and mental stimulation needs to come from knowing and understanding the God of heaven and the earth. Number 5, James chapter 1, verses 14 and 15. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then, when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. God likes pretty things. He did not withhold this trait when we were created, and thus we also have the desire to want pretty things. The saying goes, all that glitters isn't gold. This proverb describes precisely the many evils we fixate ourselves upon that draw us away and lead us to traps we cannot escape. We naturally desire pleasure. Evil pleasures at times lies dormant within us, and Satan and his evil team entices us and wakes up that evil propensity that will cause us to sin. Each person, through their temperament and/or experiences, has a particular lust for evil that is not sanctioned by God. People give into these lusts for the pleasure of a moment, disregarding the eternal consequences they will have. Do note that while the adversary tempts us, his temptations would be of no strength if we did not already have the seed within us that he looks to germinate. Do not go after the bait that is placed in front of you, be it a half-naked man or woman, dessert on the table, alcoholic beverage, brand name items. God, through James, says that it will bring forth sin, ultimately leading to death. The only desire we ought to have in this world is the desire to do God's will and have His law within our hearts. And perhaps the desire to subscribe to this channel for the continuing of the spread of the gospel. Other videos that provide Bible truth can be found here, including the subscription button, which we strongly encourage you to click so that you don't miss important truths necessary to know for the times we live in. Continue to pray for others and pray for yourself, and as always, don't be a fool. Use your tool.